Hi, this is Perez, the Latin heartthrob from WWE, NWA, World-Class Championship Wrestling. I am about to do an interview with Hannibal TV.
This is Hannibal from the HannibalTV.com, and today we have WWE and WCW former wrestler and world-class championship wrestling legend. He's worked all over the place, but he disappeared very quickly, and he was at the top of his game when he left the business. Mr. Al Perez, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you, and thank you for having me.
And thanks for still doing this. I know you just had your mother-in-law pass away, so...
Yep, 2 days ago.
Yeah, a little bit of a rough time for you, but to start this off, could you tell us a bit about your childhood?
Well, I was born 1957 in Tampa, Florida, so I'm a Florida native. Went to high school, 1 year college, wrestled amateur, 7-year background, state champ, second runner-up. I did pretty good in amateur. I followed my big brother, my older brother, and when he was in high school, I was in junior high, and I just wanted to be just like him. And as time got on, I got bigger, and I was approached by the great Malenko about trying to professional wrestling, and I did. And I did it for 14 and a half years, and I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do for a living. 14 and a half years later, I still wanted to do it, so that's what I did.
So what was the actual training like by the great Malenko? He's one of the greatest heels ever.
Yeah, he was the greatest. To me, he was the greatest heel. Him and Carl Gotch, they used to call him the God of Wrestling in Japan. Awesome, one of the toughest men I ever met. And it was brutal training. He taught you just not how to work, but the pros and cons and how to make it look the best you can make it. And that's what I think carried me as far up as I did, because I loved my job, I loved the sport, and I put everything into it. I couldn't go into a match half-ass. I had to go full throttle the whole time.
Did he teach you any submission wrestling while you were there?
Yes, he did. Carl Gotch was one of the greatest submission wrestler holds, and he did. And when I first started, he come hobbling into the gym, and I looked at this guy. He was 57 years old, and he looked at me and he told me, the guy had an arm bar and told me it's supposed to hurt, make it look like it hurt. So I looked at him dead in his eye and just went, ouch. And this older guy, back then I was in my 20s, this old guy, 57 years old, crawled into the ring and he said, let me show you what I mean. And he went from one arm all the way across my body, my legs, back, everything, and one scream the whole time. It was the most painful I've ever been in pain. And he said, that's what it's supposed to feel like. And that was it. He taught me a lot, and Carl Gotch and the great Malenko. So yeah, I had a good training.
Was Dean training there at the time?
Now Dean was already into it. I worked out with his brother Jody, Jody Simon. And I tell you what, that's another tough dude right there.
Now, what was the first territory you worked in?
New Brunswick, Canada.
Okay. They
had me booked over there with, I think his name was Emil Dupree. And didn't last long there at all. They had, in the typical business world, you had a guarantee of what you were going to make and this, that, and the other, and it never came to that. So yeah, I figured the business wasn't for me. If a man can't hold his word on something, then it wasn't for me. Came back home, ended up getting married, and then I went to California. Was my first territory in the States.
So that was Mike LaBelle's territory at the time?
Back then it was Anton Leon.
Okay.
Anton Leon. He just promoted a small area, Sacramento, Bakersfield, a couple of little towns like that, but I lasted there for about 6 months, and then moved on.
Who were some of the guys you feuded with in that territory?
Ron Starr was a big name back then. Ron Starr, he's really the only one that I remember. That was quite a few years ago.
Okay. And where did you head from there?
From there I went to Ohio.
Okay.
With the Fullers had opened up something with, I forgot the promoter's name there, and that only lasted about 3 weeks there because they shut down. Then I went into Pensacola, Florida for the Fullers, and I worked there for a while, and then opened the doors up, and I was going overseas. I was doing New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, and just went on from there and came back home. Ended up in Texas again for Joe Blanchard. Worked there for a while. That's where my son was born, San Antonio, Texas. There, and just kept on going from there.
Who were some of the guys that you feuded with in Blanchard's territory?
It was Tully Blanchard, Fernandez, Manny Fernandez. I teamed up with Manny Fernandez, which he taught me quite a bit as far as tag teams and holds and moves and putting stuff together. There was quite a few good hands there, and that's where I met Luke Williams. He was from New Zealand, and he was the one that got me booked for the territory in New Zealand.
At what point did you start working for World Class?
Sometimes you get in a business and it doesn't click until you become your heel. Because I was a baby face my first couple of years. And when I became a heel in New Zealand, that's when it clicked and everything just made sense of how it was supposed to go. Right. And then, man, it's just like they said, a heel led the match, and they did. I did it. I led the matches, and I did what I wanted to do in that match and controlled the pace, the tempo, what was going on and everything, and I really enjoyed it. To beat up a person the way the great Malenko taught me was, if you beat up nothing, you beat nothing. If you make your opponent look like he's something, then you beat something. So I can honestly say I don't remember ever squashing anybody in the ring because I beat nothing. So I always try to make my opponents look decent or good because they made me look better.
Who was the one that brought you into World Class?
Gary Hart. Gary Hart brought me into World Class, and I met him in Puerto Rico. And Abdullah, I was working against Abdullah at the time, and I sent out pictures and everything, information, and Gary Hart called me and said, you want to come work for me in World Class? I was like, yes, I do. So I left home, went to World Class, and he had Bruiser Brody in the locker room in his office, and they were sitting down talking. I walked in, and he tells me, Al, I'm gonna be your manager, and you're gonna be my world champion. Is that okay with you? And I was like, yeah, it is. Now, I've held a few titles before then, but I thought this was my big push, and it opened up a lot of doors, and Gary helped me out quite a bit.
And I've heard that were you actually working in Puerto Rico the night Brody was killed?
I was supposed to be there.
Okay.
I was supposed to be there, and when my family, Thanksgiving, all the holidays are big days there, and I told Jose Gonzalez that I wouldn't be there. He said, yes, you be here. I said, no, I'll be there the day after. And it just so happens I didn't show up because I wasn't gonna go. I wasn't gonna miss my family holiday, because family to me is very important and very big. And then I got that call that night that Brody got killed, and I wasn't gonna go, and I didn't go.
What do you think that was all over? Because a lot of people thought that it was because Brody was stiffing him in the ring, but they were both baby faces at that time.
No, Brody was a tough guy, but he was business. Jose Gonzalez, he had a little chip on his shoulder, short man complex. Well, Brody's dead.
Yeah. Knowing Carlos from working for him and Victor Jovica, who also was an owner, are you surprised that they still kept Jose employed after that?
Yeah, I am. I was. He was also a partner with Colon.
Okay.
So, and Jovica, so they couldn't get rid of him like that, but ever since then, their business went downhill fast, yeah. Which was, to me, deserved. Brody was a big man, and he actually put me over in the middle of the ring one time. You know,
Okay.
so to work with somebody like that and that talent and that capability and size and everything, it was an honor. And for him to let me beat him in the middle of the ring, that helped. That was a great big push too in my career. So.
How did you like your time in Puerto Rico overall? Because you had a lot of success there.
Yeah, I did. I had a good time. Like I enjoyed it. It was island, just what I'm used to. The weather is fantastic. The people were good. I mean, it was a completely different crowd from anywhere else I've been, you know. But as far as the wrestling ability, and it was good. I learned a lot there. You know, Ron Starr, Chicky Starr was there. They brought in the Cuban Assassin, Dave Sierra. They brought in a bunch of guys and they would rotate them. Abdullah the Butcher, the Wyndhams come in through there, and I worked with all of them. Dory and Terry Funk, I worked with all of them up there. I had a really good teaching when there.
How did you get along with Terry Funk?
Terry came into the dressing room one time, not even the dressing, in the hotel, wasted. I looked at this guy and said, man, I feel sorry for the guy he works with tonight. He looked like he was wasted. His pants were half undone. One shoe was in, one shoe was out of his pants. And I said, man, I feel sorry for the guy that has to work with him tonight. And it was me. But when he got in that ring, he was all business. You couldn't tell if he was drunk, high, or whatever. When he got in that ring, he was professional.
And speaking of guys like that, did you ever notice that about the Von Erichs when you were working in World Class, that they were out of it some of the time?
No, I never saw it. Especially I worked a lot of matches with Kevin and Kerry, and I never saw any of the effects of drugs or alcohol or anything on any of them. When they got in the ring, like I said, most of the time when them guys got in the ring, it was business. And Kerry and Kevin, both of them were fantastic to work with. You know, a little stiffer than what I was used to, but they were paying my paycheck, so I'll take a blow or two.
How was the heat from the fans when you guys were facing the Von Erichs?
It made it really easy for me to have heat with these guys, because I like I said, I made them look good, which they weren't bad. You know, it had the size and everything anyway. And just the one or two little cheap shots or cheap moves that I would make on them, man, people would go crazy. And I'd build them up and bring them down, and build them up and bring them down. That's how I was taught to do. When you have talent like Kerry and Kevin in the ring, they go. It's easy to keep heat and a match going strong.
Was Gary Hart advising you too about the wrestling business above just being your on-screen manager?
Well, Gary Hart came and asked me and if he could be my manager. I was like, yeah. When he approached me with being, you know, his champion and everything, I was like, sure. And as far as interviews and everything, I was never big on the mic. I don't think I had that type of voice that people like to hear. So Gary did a lot of my talking. When I got in the ring, I just give Gary a signal. Like I would just tap my leg or something, and he would hit my opponent's leg and just distract him for a second, which turned the heat on him for a second, and all I had to do was just one cheap shot, and I had the crowd.
How many days were you wrestling a week in that territory?
Ooh, we were going 5-6 days a week, sometimes 2 days on a week, on twice a day on Saturday. You know, we'd fly someplace and we'd drive to South Texas and wrestle there and fly back to make the match in that night, you know. So we did quite a bit.
Did you know Gino Hernandez at all?
I never met him. I never met Gino. He already passed before I got there.
Okay. What about Chris Adams?
I had some great matches with Chris Adams too. He was another piece of talent. He could go. And at the time the territory was falling, and I told Gary, because Gary was still the booker at the time, Gary, whatever it takes to make this go, I'll lose. I said, I'd rather lose it to somebody who can work. And Chris Adams was that guy that I was going to drop the title to, and he said no. And then I talked to Fritz Von Erich, the father, and he said no. He says, you're my world champion. You're going to stay my world champion. You're not going to lose it to anybody until I tell you to. So I said, okay. So I kept the title, and I kept going until they said that was it. When Fritz said that's it, you know, he was closing down or selling, then I did my thing and left.
I guess that's Jerry Jarrett eventually took over that territory.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever work for Bill Watts?
Yes, I did. He was one of the hardest guys to work for. He demanded so much that I didn't agree with a lot of stuff that he would do. I mean, his territory was good, but I didn't agree with a lot of the way he ran things and just how he picked his people, you know. To me, he was a tough guy, but he wanted to be surrounded by tough guys that made him, you know, like the king of the tough guy, which he had a lot of tough guys with him, but he wasn't all that talented, I didn't think, you know.
Did you ever witness any of the backstage fights that happened in that territory, because he was known for letting them go?
No, I never saw any of there.
Who did you feud with when you were there?
They teamed me up with Wendell Cooley.
Okay.
And we were basically, because Rock and Roll Express had just left when we got there, and they tried to make me and Wendell the next Rock and Roll Express, and it's just, we weren't that small to do the high-flying stuff that they could do. And there was Dick Slater there I started feuding with after we split up, with Wendell and I. I started feuding with Dick Slater, Buzz Sawyer, Hacksaw Duggan, you know, we got a couple run-ins there with him, Jake Roberts. There was a lot of guys that were talented, but wasn't for me. That territory wasn't for me.
What was Buzz Sawyer like? Because we've heard that he was a little nuts.
He was not a little, he was a lot nuts, but he was another amateur wrestler that was really good in his sport. But when he got in that ring, he was all business, you know. And he was one of Bill Watts's pit bulls. You know, he tried to use him to hurt people, which he never hurt me because I knew him from school. You know, he was younger than me, but I knew him back then, and he knew I was too, and we never had issues.
Okay. At what point did you start wrestling for Crockett?
When I left World Class, Gary and I went and, who was his name? I forgot this guy's name. Anyway, we went to World Class and started working out of World Class and went for the Crockett's, and Dusty was a booker. And, you know, Ric Flair was a champion, a world champion and everything. And there was a lot of, I didn't think I was gonna make it there. And man, I did. I underestimated myself, but I had the same ability that a lot of these guys did. I thought, wow, these guys are superstars. And man, I fit right in with them. And I felt confident because they were putting me over on a lot of these guys that I would look up to, you know. I never met some of these guys, you know. And when I got in that ring, it was like, they're following me, you know. And I'd call some matches, and they were right there, and they worked with me. And when it was time to do their job, they did their job for me. Nikita Koloff, hell, all of them worked with me, and they did their jobs, you know. They made me look good, and when it was time to do, I did them the same way.
And that reminds me, is it true there's some story that apparently before the NWA days, they were going to bring in Flair somewhere and you refused to job to him? Is that true?
That came from Flair. When I had given my notice, because they changed bookers again. And Dusty was out, and Flair was friends with the booker, and he was a world champion. And the new booker wanted to build him back up, and I was the only guy that hadn't been beaten.
Was that Ole the new booker? Or?
I'm not sure what
it
was. I don't even remember.
Because I know Ole was the Black Scorpion's voice.
Yeah, no, so. I did the Black Scorpion once.
Yeah.
Okay. But I forgot his name. Anyway, he'd come up to me, and I went to the office because everybody was waiting in line to talk to the new owners and talk to the new bookers. Well, I walked in there, and he knew who I was.
Oh, is this when it became WCW?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was that change there. Because when Dusty was a booker, I had no problem. They were pushing me up. I forgot what title I held there for them, and it was me and Larry Zbyszko and Gary Hart. And everything was going well, and then between Flair and Dusty and the new Booker and the old Booker, and it was a bunch of junk. So then he brought somebody else in as a Booker who was buddy with Flair. And I was the only guy, like I said, I hadn't been beaten because they were pushing me up, you know. And I walked in the office, it was my turn, and the new Booker tells me, he says, I see something in you, but I don't know what it is. Can you do the super fly off the top rope? I said, I can do anything in that ring, but I'm not gonna copy someone else. That's Jimmy's super fly. I'm not doing him. Well, I can't put my finger on it. I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, I'll give you a 2-week notice. When you figure out what you're gonna do with me, then let me know. Well, next thing I know, I was booked with Flair. And I told Flair, I said, I will put you over anywhere, everywhere, anytime. And we did. I said, but I will not let you beat me at home. Because I'm coming back to Florida. Dusty's opened up the territory here again, and I'm going to work at home. And Rick said, no problem, I understand. And we did. He beat me in all the towns up until Florida. When we came to St. Pete, and I told him in the dressing room, and he said, Al, we'll do a double DQ. I said, okay, thank you. And the Booger came up 20 minutes later and says, how do you figure my world champ beating you is gonna hurt you? I said, it's not. He said, good. I said, because he's not gonna beat me. And he told me, said, well, if you're not gonna let him beat you, then I don't need you. And I said, okay, goodbye. And that was it. I told him, I said, you won't last 6 weeks. And he lasted 4 weeks and he was done.
And you don't remember who that was exactly?
No, I don't remember.
There's been so many that have,
yeah.
It wasn't anyone really famous?
No.
Okay. So there was no incident, so just to set the record straight, there was nothing where you ever said you were gonna shoot on Ric Flair?
I never said any of that.
And I think in his book, what he said was you were gonna be the full-time Black Scorpion, but the thing was you didn't want a job to Sting or something.
That came from Flair too. Yeah. That's not what happened. They asked me if I would be the Black Scorpion. I said yes. They put 2 masks on me because they didn't want anybody to know who it was. I did my job in the ring. Sting beat me. He pulled off my mask and he brought it up in the air like that, and I had another mask on and I crawled out of the ring. They didn't want to know who it was. They didn't want to bring out who it was at the time. And they said thank you, and that was it. Flair made a comment on one of his interviews that I was a dumbass because I didn't do the job. I had the spot. They brought me in there that one time for that match, and I did my job.
And there's been a couple older interviews. I think there's one that I heard some audio from maybe 15 years ago where you had said you had some heat with Sting.
I didn't care for Sting. We were in the dressing room one time, and this is pretty bad. You can keep this on if you want. I don't care. I'll let you know. We were in the dressing room time, and they had these fan fest in there, you know, and they had a few of the other guys in there, but Sting was in there. He's the one that really stood out. One of the other guys that would have died, passed, so I'm not going to say his name. Anyway, these kids came in a wheelchair, handicap, you know, and they were asking for autographs, and they were in bad shape. They were really bad shape. And Sting, oh yeah, hey, how you doing? And he signed his autograph. And as soon as, there was like 3 of them that came in there, and as soon as they left, him and a couple other people started making fun of him. So as far as heat, I didn't like that at all. I mean, they started, and to me, that was the lowest anybody could get when you make fun of kids like that, anybody like that, you know. And after that, I didn't care for him at all.
And I guess in that same interview, you said Sting went on to be your son's favorite wrestler. I'm sure your son's grown up now, but someone wanted me to ask you if he's still your son's favorite.
Well, it wasn't Sting that was his favorite. His favorite was Edge.
Oh, Edge, okay.
Yeah, he didn't care for Sting either because he was only about 4 or 5 years old then.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he didn't care for Sting. Anyway, with Edge, we had gone to the gym. My son was like 18 years old. We had gone to the gym. And we're in the backside there, and this guy, big blonde-headed guy, comes walking in, and my son tells me, Dad, that's Edge. You gotta know him. Dad, you know him. I said, Michael, I don't know who he is. I don't know him. He said, come on, Dad, introduce me. I said, Mike, I don't know him. Well, the guy walked to the back and saw me, and he came up to me and he started talking to me. He introduced himself as Edge, and he gave me his name. I don't know his name. And he introduced
Adam
himself.
Copeland, I think.
Yeah. And he said, man, Mr. Perez, it's an honor to meet you, and man, it's fantastic. I used to watch you all the time, and he really built me up in front of my son. I said, oh, Ed, this is my son, Michael. Hey, how you doing? He shook his hand. So a few minutes later, he walks off. He says, nice to meet you. He walks off, and I look at my son and tell him, says, and you thought he was something big. He knows me. He said, but Dad, you're just my dad.
And a lot of people have stories about Lex Luger, I guess, that he was a bit of a dick backstage. Did you ever notice that?
Yeah. He didn't get along with very many people. I never saw him get along with anybody. I heard a lot of people talk that they didn't like him at all. He wasn't any kind of talent in that ring whatsoever. I had a few matches with him, and the safest thing to do with him was let him put me in a headlock, and I told him, just hold on. Because he had 2 left feet, 2 left hands. He was the most uncoordinated person in the ring. And they gave him a big push because of his look. He had a fantastic look, but as far as talent and ability, he had none.
So you went to Dusty's territory after that for a short period of time. How did you get along with Dusty?
I got along with Dusty well. And I was a Florida champion, and he asked me if I'd put his son over, and I had no problem. I put his son over in the middle of the ring. I had great matches with Dusty, never had any words.
Do you have any stories about him that people might not know?
Dusty was to me, from what I saw, he was a real family man. He traveled with his wife and his kids and everything, and he wanted better for his family than what he could do. And to me, that's what sticks out in my mind. He was awesome family man.
Have you heard about this new company that's opening up now, backed by a billionaire, and his son Cody is one of the executives? I know you don't follow it.
No, I haven't followed since I got out.
It's the same owner as the Jacksonville Jaguars. So
oh, really?
Some people think it's like the football people trying to get back at McMahon for trying to restart XFL, but supposedly it's going to have huge backing. So
well, I hope it does, because I'd like to be involved in something that I'd like to get back in the business. I'd never get back in the ring, but as far as teaching and stuff like that, I would do something like that for somebody else. Vince, I have nothing good to say about Vince.
Well, I'll get into that now. I guess very shortly after you quit WCW, you were only in Florida a while before you got started with WWE. Who was the one that brought you in?
I sent my wife. My wife sent pictures to Vince's company, and they sent the paperwork back and all the information that they wanted. My wife filled out all the paperwork for me. And she got me in there, and they said, yes, come up, we want you. So I went up to Vince. I went up to WWF, and here again, I see all these big stars that I've seen on TV, because I never got to watch it. Because I was one doing them. I never watched them, so here are all these guys that I know, and some of the guys that I've heard of and stuff. I see them all in the dressing rooms. And I got along with most people, I thought, so I don't know. But just, it was a completely different world, But I had a few conversations with Vince, and it wasn't bad up until the end, I was there for about 6 months, 7 months. And they hadn't done anything with me, and I was approached by all their agents. Oh, we got to come up with a new gimmick. Give you a gimmick. Can you shave your head? Would you shave your head? I'm like, you got enough bald guys here. Oh, can you do this? I said, I can do anything. Oh, can wear colors, wear colorful, be colorful. I said, that's not me. I said, if you want colors, there's other people that do colors. I do black and white, And like they had all kind of different ideas, but from what I always understood was, if it's not Vince that's making the decision, you're not getting anything anywhere. So right after that, Vince came up to me and said, I know you're having a hard time, because nobody knows who you are. I said, Vince, every time I get in that ring, the Latin heartthrob, where's Gary Hart, and Kerry Von Erich's gonna kick your ass. Every town that I went to, those were the three things. So nobody knows who I am, but they all know who I am. Right. He said, well, the New York crowd is different. I said, okay, whatever it is. He said, when we give you a gimmick, it'll be completely different. And I told him, I said, Vince, I'm not a gimmick type guy. I said, what you see is what you get. I said, when I get in that ring, I do my business. And we went on for a while, and probably about next 2 TVs later, Pat Patterson comes up to me and he tells me, oh, sit down, let's talk. And I guess you can call me a little bit of a hothead. They had the 8-foot table sitting up against the wall long ways, and he's sitting his back up against the wall. And I was standing on the side of the table, and he again builds it, oh, you know, it's good to have you here. It's a family business. You're going to make a lot of money, a little French Canadian. You're going to make a lot of money, and oh, we'll give you a gimmick, and oh, you'll be worldwide famous. You'll make a lot of money, and kept on and kept on and kept on. He said, and besides, here you go both ways. And when he said that, I just kicked him off the table. I said, he said, no, I'm talking bad guy or good guy. What do you think I meant? And I've been at hotels with everybody checking in, and he'd be in the back and somebody up front, I'm not mentioning names, he'd say 2 beds, and Pat would be hollering from the back, 1 bed will be fine. And the guy put his head down and said, 1 bed. And it just like, that was right before all of this happened. And I was like, I'm out of this. And the next day,
what was his reaction when you kicked the table? He was just panicked?
Oh no, he just stood up like, oh no, what do you think I meant? I was talking bad guy or good guy.
Right.
You know, everybody knows he was married to Louis, a guy, you know, so it wasn't strange. And when he told me that, it's like I said, maybe I'm a little bit of a hothead, but I didn't appreciate that at all. And that was the end of the conversation. The next day at TV, that's when the Ultimate Warrior was their world champion. And Vince came up to me and said, Al, we're looking for somebody to make our world champion look good. I said, me? He said, you'd be perfect. I said, yesterday I was a piece of shit. Today I'm good enough to make your world champion look good? He said, yeah. I said, you got the wrong guy. And that was it. I walked out. So that was it, you know.
Did you get along with the Warrior? Because I guess he was in world class too.
Yeah, I did. I met him in Texas when he was a nobody and nothing. He was a super nice guy. You know, I had no words with him. Matter of fact, him and Sting tagged up. And to me, Sting had more ability, but Jim was more the part. You know, and Jim was a really good guy. You know, Sting to me is an asshole.
Did Jim still treat you well when he saw you in WWE?
Yeah. I talked to him about the match and everything. He said, Al, sorry things didn't work out. I appreciate you. And I said, yeah, Jim, I said, in any other situation, I have no problem. He said, I know. So he knew what had happened. I guess he knew why I was there, you know.
Did you have any contact with Hulk Hogan when you were back there?
No, never had contact with him.
And what about Bret Hart? I know you wrestled him, I think.
Yeah, I wrestled. I worked with him a few times, and he was good in talent. There was nothing wrong with him. He was very able to do, and he did. He was an athlete.
Did you work with Randy Savage ever?
No, I didn't.
No.
I never worked with Randy.
Did you see him backstage at all and talk to him?
Yeah, I talked to him. I knew Randy from a couple other territories that we'd crossed paths on, and super nice guy. And as a matter of fact, I traveled with Randy a few times, and from what I always heard was Randy didn't travel with anybody.
Right, because
Randy
he was very paranoid.
by himself. Yeah, and I made a few road trips with Randy, so like I said, I never had any problems with any of them.
And what do you think your best match was?
I'm gonna have to say Matt Bourne.
Matt Bourne?
Maniac Matt Bourne. We had a match, it was 45 minutes long. Gary Hart is in my corner, and Tony Bourne, Matt's dad, was in his corner. And at the end of the 45 minutes, he had me pinned 1, 2, and time ran out. And people went crazy. Gary Hart and Tony went together and said another 15 minutes. So we'd go at it again, all the way through, boom, boom, and we'd go head to toe. I mean, just like all the way, all the time, Matt and I. And again at the end, 1, 2, and the time would lapse out again. Ding, ding, ding. And the fans started screaming, bullshit, bullshit. So Gary and Tony got together and gave us another 15 minutes, and we did the same thing again. And at the end of it, we had a standing ovation. That, to me, that was my best match ever.
A lot of people say Matt had like a crazy side to him and he was known as a real tough guy.
He was. When we locked up, the first 5 minutes of every match that we had, it looked like a fight. It really did look like a fight, but pushing and shoving and everything we did, and basically I pretty much called it because that made Matt happy. And he would go. But there was a few times when Matt got tired and he'd quit. He'd say, I'm done, just pin me. And I'd hold him up and I'd say, nope, we're going. And I'd let him catch his breath and we'd go and we finished the match. But he was another piece of talent there. He was good.
Did you ever see him when he played the Doink character?
Yeah, I did. I ran into him a couple of times, some autograph sessions and stuff like that. And we talked, and he'd say the same thing. He said the best match he ever had was mine, him and I.
And I guess after WWE, you went to the Global Wrestling Federation?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any memories of that company? Not
really. I didn't stay there very long either. And then I was just like hit and run. I never stayed in any territory after that. I did Japan and all for a few times, and just wasn't, I was almost done. I was almost done in my career.
Who did you work for in Japan?
Baba, Giant
Okay.
Baba. And that was another thing. I met him in Puerto Rico because him and Abdullah were really good friends because Abdullah worked Japan a lot. So I'd work there and everything, and Giant Baba wanted me to go to Japan, and I did. I worked for him quite a few times. I think it was like 5 or 6 times, and I was pretty much done. I was tired of it. Then I had blown out my elbow and had problems with it, and that's what took me out. 14 and a half years later, one little incident on my arm, and I was done.
Because I guess after that you went to work for UPS?
Yes. I've been there 25 years next month. 25 years, so, and that's the first company that I ever worked at that had benefits. That was my first real job. I'm still there. I just changed over from the morning shift to the night shift. And I wish I'd have done that 20 years ago too.
Wow. Any secrets on how to keep a good physique? Because you always have one of the best physiques in wrestling.
Well, I appreciate it. I was never much for dieting, but I would be able to burn off the calories that I put in. I still go to the gym 4 or 5 days a week, and I do a little bit of cardio and I work out. I don't go heavy. I can't go heavy because of all my injuries. I've had 12 surgeries putting me back together. And basically, whatever you intake, you got to burn it out when you're done. And I would do my cardio at the end of my workout. I'd do the cardio at the beginning to warm up and all, and get my workouts in and go.
I'm going to ask you a couple fan questions now. One fan was asking, I know you're not a small guy at all, but he's asking, what's the best advice you would give for a smaller wrestler?
Wow. It depends on how far he wants to go in the business. If he's talking about going in the business, agility. If you can fly, jump up around, and make your small stuff look big, you'll go far in the business, because there's a lot of big guys that can move, but there's also a lot of big guys that can't move. And you got these small guys, they're called flyers. You get these high flyers like the Rock and Roll Express. If you can do their stuff like that, you can go far in this business, because a lot of people like showmanship.
Do you have any advice on being a heel?
To be a heel, you got to be able to leader. You got to be a leader, and you got to love it. Because I've been in that ring sometimes as a heel, and I'll go so far in it that in one of the islands, Trinidad, I was wrestling their champ, and I get into my matches. To be a heel, you got to make your baby face look strong and keep him strong, because that's the only way you're going to get out of that ring alive. And I used to keep my baby faces strong as I could to keep them alive, because at the end of the match, we were Trinidad. Before I knew it, that place was rough. They didn't have ringside because it was dangerous. And during my match, there was nobody sitting down in the stands anymore. They were all ringside. And my world, the guy that I was beating or wrestling with, he covered me up, he protected me and got me back to the dressing room, because we were surrounded. So if you're gonna be a heel, you gotta go, because it's not an easy, but it is so much fun. It is a blast when you have people. My son used to say, "People boo you, Dad. People do boo you." I was wrestling against Nikita Koloff in Miami in the 80s. We're still having problems with Russia, and they're booing me and cheering a Russian. And I tell my son, and I tell a lot of the guys, I did my job well.
Someone's asking if you have any good stories from WWE TV tapings.
Some of the stories I have, I can't really talk about. We used to pull ribs on people, you know, cut the toes off of socks and hang clothes up outside when it's freezing outside. They wake up in the morning, the flagpole has their pants and shirts and everything frozen out there, but I didn't do too much, I didn't think.
Another guy's asking, do you have any good road stories?
Well, a few times we'd get some rookies and stuff and send them to different towns and tell them, oh yeah, we need you over here on April 1st over here, and the young guys would drive over there and they'd go to the building, there was no one there, and they'd call up and ask what happened. It was like, oh, is it today? You know, and April Fool's Day. So we did a few of those tricks, but I didn't do anything bad, I didn't think.
Has anyone ever told you that there's this newer wrestler, Seth Rollins, that looks a lot like you when you were young?
Yeah, I heard a few people tell me that. Friends of mine told me, this guy looks just like you, he's a little bit bigger than you. I was like, yeah, it's good, it's good. I never said him, never met him or anything, so I don't know how true it is.
Well, he has been WWE champion a couple times now, so I guess that's a compliment.
That is, and thanks.
Did you ever wrestle Jake the Snake Roberts?
No, never wrestled against him. He earns the name Snake. He is definitely a snake, not only in the ring, but in reality. In real life, he's a snake.
From the way he's treated you, or?
Yeah. Few incidents that happened, and he's definitely a snake.
I guess you don't want to elaborate on those.
No, it's kind of bad, but yeah, I wouldn't trust him at all. And different, Sam Houston, his brother, completely different person.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy. I've interviewed him
is.
before. I love him.
Yes, he is.
Someone says, thanks a lot for everything. What was your workout routine back in the day as far as weights and cardio?
Back in the day, I used to go pretty heavy. I could go heavy. And I loved it. That was my job, to look and keep my body the way it looked, which was hard, but I enjoyed the gym and I enjoyed my job in the ring. So I made the best of both.
Any interesting stories about Playboy Gary Hart, someone's asking?
Not really. Gary was, like I said, Gary taught me quite a bit. As far as the ring ability, I did my own because I knew it. But on the mic and just the way he carried himself, he was definitely one of the greatest managers that anybody could have.
Did you have to blade a lot when you were wrestling in Puerto Rico, and what's your opinion on that in wrestling?
Yeah, I did. I didn't like it. I didn't believe in it, but I had to do a few of those, and well, pretty much in every territory that I went, they always expected a little bit, and I would do a little bit here and there, but sometimes I have to better hit me again because I'm not ready. So I did when I had to do it, but. In Puerto Rico, I was in a cage match, a barbed wire match with Jose Gonzalez. And the first time he pushed me up against that barbed wire and it stuck me in the back, I said, that was it. I said, I'm not doing that. So every time we'd go up to the ring, I would put his back up against it, because I'm not getting all cut up like that.
What would you consider your top career moment was and your worst career moment?
On top was when I became world champion, and a lot of the titles that I had, they meant a lot. I said I didn't believe in it because I know they were given to me. Because in that sport, I don't care how tough you are, how much background you have, there's always somebody bigger, stronger, and tougher. And I had a lot of respect, and a lot of the guys had a lot of respect for me. And I don't know how I got it, but I'm glad I did. Tough guys, that business is full of tough guys. My weakest moment was when I didn't make it in a territory. Some of those territories, like the first one that I went to in Mel Dupree up in Canada, I'd like to go back in there when I was able to and make it. I didn't like to fail at anything I did or anywhere I went.
Somebody says Seth Rollins has great talent, but you would destroy him. And another guy's asking who your all-time favorite opponent was.
All-time favorite got to be Matt Bourne.
For the reasons you stated, I guess.
Yeah, Matt Bourne was one of the greatest. As far as talent-wise, too, Matt Bourne, Terry Taylor, Tito Santana, a lot of them guys, because they would go. Terry Taylor was the only one as a baby face that he asked me if he could call the match for me, and I was like, sure, because Terry was talented. Yeah, he went as a Red Rooster at the WWF, but he was talented. He was the only guy that I let call my match once I became a heel.
Did you have any interactions with Bruce Pritchard in WWE?
I believe I worked with him a few times. And yeah, no, he was fine.
Stiffest opponent, someone's asking.
Man, believe it or not, it wasn't even in a ring. It was Fritz von Erich. He hit me so hard one time I thought he busted my head open with just the palm of his hand.
And favorite tag team partner?
Had a lot of problems with him, but I learned quite a bit from him. Was Manny Fernandez. Manny Fernandez, when he got in the ring, as far as a tag team partner, he taught me a lot, but he also had my blood pressure so high that they wouldn't let me wrestle one night. It was 180 over 130, and we had a 6-man tag. My blood pressure went down a little bit. We had that match. It was the Sheep Herders back then, Luke and Butch, and Bobby Duncan as the Mummy, but it was Bobby Duncan, and it was Manny, myself, and Scott Casey. And Manny called a spot, and I messed up that spot, and he said something to me, and Luke Williams had to hold me back, and he grabbed me, tackled me, held me down, and told Manny to get out of the ring. Because I think that day there, I was gonna end it with Manny.
And someone's asking why you stopped wrestling. You kind of already covered that, but he says you were so talented, it's a shame.
Well, I appreciate that, but yeah, my health was more important. After my infection in my elbow, they were talking about cutting my arm off. So after about a year of rehab and everything, I had my arm, and I walked away from the business because it wasn't for me anymore.
Do you have a favorite band?
Not really. I don't even have a favorite athlete. My son asked me that one time too. Dad, who's your favorite athlete? Who's your favorite football player? I said, I don't have any. And he says, come on, Dad, you got to know somebody. I said, Michael, I don't admire any athlete. I guess because I was an athlete. I said, but I'll let you know one day. And I was watching Dallas Cowboys play, and it was Marion Barber running back, and T.O. T.O. And Marion Barber broke through the line and was taken off down the sideline, and he was gone. And T.O. caught him from behind and ran into the end zone with him. Slowed down to run into the end zone with him. And I told my son that day, that's an athlete.
Did you ever wrestle in Springfield, Missouri at the Shrine Mosque?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I did. I probably, if NWA or WWF covered it, I did.
Do you have any Vince McMahon stories?
I'd rather not really get into those, but no, not really. Yeah, one time in the dressing room, he came out. I've been there maybe a couple months, and for TV, he had all three crews together. And he came in there bragging one day. So he come in there and says, "Guys, we need to pick it up a little bit. I only made $376 million this year, and I got to buy some more trucks." And a lot of the other guys started saying, fucking asshole and stuff, and I agreed with that. So he was, good story about him. He took it from a sport to showbiz, and a lot of the guys made a lot more money than what we did as far as athletes.
In your opinion, what town or territory had the best fans?
I have to say World Class and NWA. When it was NWA with Out of the Crockett's, they had fans, and the fans were believable fans. They were real fans.
And last fan question I'll ask is, what is your favorite movie and food?
I'm a big spaghetti and eggplant parmesan. Movie, I'm not even sure. I think it was an old Western with the outlaw Josie Wales.
Did you ever wrestle Dr. D, David Schultz?
No.
No. And do you have any social media or anything where people could follow you, I guess?
I don't have any. I don't know how to do Facebook and stuff like that. I still get a lot of fan mail and ask for autographs and stuff. And I've been out 25 years now, and I still have fan mail coming in, people asking autographs and how I'm doing and stuff like that. So I appreciate that.
If somebody wants to book you for a convention or autograph appearance, how could they do that?
The only person that I've ever used and I've never had to pay was Laura.